Martin Rooney, welcome to Ordinary Visionaries. Thank you so much for taking the time for this interview.
Thanks for inviting me, Robert.
The very first question we ask is, how are you an ordinary visionary?
A bit tricky, really. I feel a bit of a fraud because most of us, in our own way, are fairly extraordinary when you think about the biology and the biological chances of us being put together.
Absolutely.
And from a visionary point of view, my life's journey I've sort of felt through rather than visualized through my eyes or my mindset. So I'm out on 2 counts, but I'm happy to help with a chat that follows.
Yeah. Being ordinary, I don't think is a bad thing. Being ordinary is, well, we're all humans. We all have bodies. We all have minds. We all have aspirations. We do what we do. And the reason I came up with that, I think it's useful to talk about that a bit, is that a lot of people consider themselves ordinary and not special in any way. So you take ordinary and visionary, and it's sort of a oxymoron in a sense. How can I be a visionary if I'm ordinary? Well, everybody's just a human, and yet we have ideas, we have a felt sense of what we want to do, we get inspired to do things, and we take action. So we want to hear about your story. So tell me a little bit about your background first, and we'll go from there.
Right. As a youngster, I was always very interested and blessed with a certain amount of capability in sport. A whole number of different ones: cricket, rugby, basketball, swimming, weightlifting, running, throwing, table tennis, to name but one or two. And I always looked at trying to get better at things. And one of the things I suffered with as a child was a difficulty breathing. And with the benefit of hindsight, I know that was because I was consuming too much dairy. And I was set on that path by the example of a Commonwealth sprinter who I read about in some journal or other that I was reading. And when he cut out dairy from his diet, it improved his breathing. So I thought I'd try that. And that was my first step, really, on the sort of natural connection between what we are and what we eat.
How old were you when that happened?
Late teens.
So that's pretty early in life to start looking at your diet. I didn't look at that until much later in life. But so you went, oh, okay, I'm going to cut out dairy. And dairy is an allergen for a lot of people, not everybody. For some people, it really affects them.
Yeah, it's just there's no one answer for everything.
No.
All that I say or recommend is based on what works for me, not what works for everybody.
Sure.
But some people don't even bother to look to see whether there is an alternative and that they're actually doing something that doesn't enable them to be their best selves. So if you just look at your choices, then you might be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me more. What's next? You cut out dairy. You kept being an athlete for a while.
Yeah. We just looked. My wife was chunky, shall we say, and she was looking at food selections from a weight loss point of view. I was looking for maximum nutrition and benefit that way, and we just started reading, learning about things, and we decided one day to come up with a concept of a health food shop, which would allow us more exposure to these particular traits, chance to talk to people about it themselves.
How old were you at that time?
Well, I was very mature then. I was about 24.
So 24 years old, and you thought, let's open a health food shop with your wife. Yeah, very good. So tell me about that journey. How did that go? And, we had talked earlier, and it unfolded quite interestingly.
Yeah, it's just something we managed to get together. My father-in-law had a shop property that he couldn't pass on to anybody. So we helped him take it off his hands and use that as the basis of where we started. And then it's just a question of learning about the ingredients ourselves. I've got a catering background, so it was interesting to see the various ways of presenting different types of foods and so on, and how they worked in conjunction with supplements and vitamins and so on. So we used to sell books as well and read them before we sold them to the customers. So it's just a journey for 8 or 9 years. And within that space, we developed a sort of seated area where we used to sell items that we'd made from ingredients that we were selling as individual ingredients. So it gave people an idea of what the foods could taste like.
Uh-huh.
And that got so popular that several customers on a regular basis asked us to if we'd consider opening a vegetarian restaurant. So again, without imagining it through a visionary point of view, did we feel that was the right way to go? Me showing off in the kitchen.
How fast did that happen? I mean,
probably after about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, but when the idea came up to open to the restaurant, you got feedback from your customers. Then you had the idea, and you talked together, I suppose. And from that point, did you open up a new establishment in a new location?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was a slightly different area away from where the shop was.
Yeah.
And in that particular time on that road, there were only 4 eating places. When we left 9 years later, there were 30 eating places on the same strip of road. So we started off a trend.
Yeah, really.
But it was a vegetarian restaurant, so it was pretty different from most of the offerings that were on that street. And we draw customers from maybe 30, 40, 50 miles away.
Right, because you were the only vegetarian restaurant you were the only game in town, so to speak, right?
That's right, yeah. I think there was perhaps 3 or 4 in the country at the time.
Really?
And we got some, I think there was one other daytime cafe in Manchester that opened around about the same time as we did, run by some students. And then a couple in London, the most famous of them being Cranks. I don't know whether you're familiar with the name.
No, Cranks. That's a good name.
They were a leading light at the time.
Yeah.
Based in the centre of London. So we ran that pretty successfully. We introduced now popular Belgian naturally fermented beers and English wines and elderflower champagne and all sorts of unusual drinks.
Yeah.
To complement the unusual food.
So what year was that you opened the restaurant, do you recall?
That's probably late 80s. I'm not very good looking backwards, so
right.
I don't keep track of the dates particularly. But it was probably, we kept that for 7 or 8 years and sold that as a going concern. And in the meantime, we'd started an outside catering business, taking the food to various places. The most prestigious job we did was at a local, what would you call them now? It's like a stately home that they opened up for exhibitions and so on.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to do a buffet for 700 people, vegetarian food.
That was a good payday if you worked out your costs well.
Yeah. It took us more than a day to get ready for it, though.
Oh, I'm sure. My goodness. So you're running this restaurant. Now, did the health food store stay open?
Yeah.
So other people were running that. You were running the restaurant, then the catering business. How many people did you have working for you total?
At this stage, not too many, because I used to do a lot of work myself. So my wife used to look after the shop, sort of Tuesday to Saturday. Then I used to go in there on my day off. I used to go in on Monday and run the shop on a Monday. So she had a couple of days off.
Right.
And then the restaurant cafe area was open from Tuesday to Saturday
Right.
through the day and into the evening. So it's full on commitment,
Now,
really.
were you the cook as well, or did you have a cook?
No, I did all the recipes from no paperwork, all in my head instinctively.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
For about the first 5 or 6 years, and then I realised that it wasn't a way really to continue, and that we needed to have some sort of standard recipes. So reluctantly, I had to write some of them down for other people to work
right.
out.
So you're really the prototypical self-employed entrepreneur. I mean, does it all, comes up with everything, does all the work, does the books, just about everything. I suppose you had some assistants, but
Yeah,
you discovered how, which keeps the overhead low, not a lot of employees, but it can break you though. It can tire you
well,
out.
it was enjoyable at the time. I didn't really see it as work. It was just excitement and challenge, really, to see where we could get to.
Yeah.
So people that work in catering generally have a different outlook to 9 to 5 employees.
Yeah.
So it's once you've converted from one to the other, it's just a lifestyle thing rather than a job per se.
Right. You're just cooking up a storm, feeding the people, healthy food, having fun,
That's
meeting
it.
a lot of people, obviously.
Yeah, sharing their stories, helping them with things that we'd learnt, and learning things from them as well.
Yeah, great.
So that was the sort of growth pattern, and then we got noticed by the local health authority. England's divided up into sort of national health trust areas.
Yeah.
And one in central Manchester was interested in us doing some work with them. So they invited me in to do some work on a particular area, and I couldn't make it work from a commercial point of view for what they were asking me to do. But while I was there, I noticed there was an area that would serve nicely as a sort of fast food takeaway, but healthy style. So I suggested the concept to them, and it was during the time when these trusts were responsible for generating some of their own income. So the fact that they could rent out this little space to an outsider meant that they were generating their own income, so they were quite keen to do that. And we proved the concept as being popular, something like 4,000 customers a week.
So what were you selling? What were you offering?
It was normal snack food, but healthier style. So instead of so much bread, there were other options that we used to make in the restaurant. So you get various non-meat products or unusual, like mushroom and Brazil nut Wellington, various quiche, carrot cake in various forms.
Was it takeaway?
Takeaway, yeah.
Now, so you were in business with the government essentially.
Absolutely.
So they put up the money?
No. We had to fund everything.
Oh, you had to fund it.
They're looking at it from an income generating point of view, so they didn't want to spend any money.
That's interesting.
They wouldn't give us any security of tenure as well, so we just had to, and we couldn't sell the business as a going concern because it was on what they call crown property.
I see.
So it was not an option to do that, but I just took a chance thinking that if you're in hospital, either working or as a patient, without the option of healthy food, your chances of recovery are diminished, in my opinion.
Right.
So we set about redressing the balance, and we ended up in about 6 or 7 different National Trust areas with these takeaways that complemented and fitted into where we were doing the outside catering. So at that stage, we had about 30 people working for us.
Wow. So from a very small enterprise to a much larger enterprise. And how long did that go?
I think from the first date we started in the shops to the day we relinquished them was probably about 14 years. But during that time, we'd sold the health food shop, and latterly we'd sold the outside catering business, and we just had the shops and the restaurant.
Right.
And at this point, I was maturing, so I thought it's about time we looked at a business that was commercially based rather than just solely lifestyle, if you like.
Yeah.
For the amount of work we were doing and the return we were getting wasn't a suggested way forward.
Yeah.
So I set about, instead of having a set premises with a limit on the number of people that came to spend money with us at maybe $10, $12, $15 a head by your terms.
Yeah.
So going back in time, we decided to get into a business where we had a scalable option where we could produce an item that was you'd sell for less than $1, but you could make them in larger numbers. And the markets were only limited by the range of people you hadn't contacted.
Right. And what was that product?
The well-known English flapjack, which I know translates to you guys at the other side of the pond as being a pancake, but it was hardly a pancake in terms of what we were presenting.
It's more like a granola bar, but instead of being crumbly, it's chewy.
Yeah, you can imagine a cake-like texture, but made with oats rather than with flour.
Yeah.
So you've got the slow energy release of oats, the natural ingredient.
Right.
And that gives you a sort of, you get the initial spike from the sweetness, but then you get the sustained energy release from the gradual breakdown of the oats.
Right.
So you didn't get the spike so much as a tail off in sugar energy.
I told you earlier that when we visited England a number of years ago, we discovered flapjacks. And I remember Bath had the best ones, just fantastic. And we would go there every day and get a few. Really, really great snacks. So you opened a flapjack factory, essentially, and then you sold those to stores?
Initially local stores, but after the first year, we found that every time we turned around and needed to increase the business, it involved extra costs. Because we'd need a different driver to cover a different area and so on. So after the first 12 months, we shifted the pattern. And instead of looking for sort of retail shops, we went the route of looking for wholesalers and distributors.
Uh-huh.
So even after 5 years, we had no more customers than we had in the early days, but each customer was taking several pallets of the product at a time rather than several boxes at a time.
Yeah, so you didn't have to have they came and picked it up from you, right? You didn't have to deliver it to them.
Well, we could deliver it to them, but instead of delivering 30 bars or 50 bars, you're delivering 15,000 bars.
Aha!
So in one delivery, you could drop that number off via a third party.
So you're making less per bar, but the volume is exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has continued to grow, thankfully, over the time we've been doing it.
And that's still in business, right?
Yeah. We export now to several countries in Europe.
Wow.
As well as throughout the UK. And just in that one business now, we've got 25 or so staff.
Fantastic. So are you hands-on with that business still?
Not so much hands-on now. I've taught and coached a team to run it for me now. So they've been doing that since my wife passed away a few years ago.
Oh.
So the emphasis for me is on catching up on some of those early mornings and late nights working and looking after myself a bit more than perhaps I did in the early days.
Now, in the interim, you've had some health problems yourself. People might notice you have a little bit of a tremor. So what is that about? What happened? How were you diagnosed? How long ago?
Well, it's a condition you might know as Parkinson's disease, they call it.
Yeah.
I don't look at it in those terms. I just look at it as something that's not working optimally in my body.
Yeah.
So I recognized the symptoms early on, but believed that the treatment for it was just medication first off. So based on our beliefs and background, this was 14 years ago, we started to look at the effects of exercise, and I'd been studying Chinese exercise and philosophy for 30 odd years as well, which I think has helped me understand the way the body works and how movement helps and so on. And now I only started medication less than a couple of years ago. And they've found now that when they've done brain scans on people that take medication and compared them to people doing active dual duty exercise, so like doing two different things at once, like patting your head, rubbing your stomach, that sort of idea, as well as, those sorts of things. The brain scan shows up pretty similar. So exercise is pretty important in stretching the body and not tensing everything up the same. So that's been a path that I've been following, really.
That is so interesting. Most people just want a pill.
Yeah.
A cure is a pill. Give me a pill. And maybe some pills are helpful, but, when you got a really bad headache, sometimes an Advil or two help. But Western medicine has gone that way, and but you approach it much more holistically, right? So I'm interested. So how did you get coaching in that? Did you do it on yourself? Do you have a physical therapist?
Combination of everything, really. I'd just like to add that I come from a medical family. My father was a doctor, my mother was a matron, my elder sister was a health visitor and midwife.
Yeah.
So I was the black sheep of the family when I left the family business to go eating food and cooking it. So I just trusted my instinct, really, and followed that, the same sort of thing. Extraordinary visionary, whether it is or it isn't, I'm not sure, but I'm comfortable with where I am at the time that I am. And in some senses, I'm sort of grateful for it because it gives you a totally different outlook on life now.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
People see you differently, and you also see other people differently as well. It's been quite a lesson.
Martin, I'm interested to know, you give me a sense that starting a business, just following, doing what's next in front of you, working hard, that I'm sure there's always difficulties. It's like, supply issues, and there's always challenges in any kind of business. But I get a sense that you handled it all with a certain amount of equanimity. That is, it didn't ruin your life. A lot of businesses ruin people's lives. They take over their lives, although you put a lot of time into it. So how was that like for you, running all these businesses? Was it stressful? Was it fun?
Mostly fun, but it had its moments. I mean, we came within a hair's whisker of going bankrupt at one point, and I had to sell the house to keep the business going at one point. That was stressful for a while. But
at what point were you in your business for that?
Probably halfway through the current business life. So I'd, up to that point, had sales reasonably comfortably, I guess. But I just had the belief that we were doing the right thing, and it was just a question of getting to the point where the last piece of the jigsaw needs to be in place before it functions properly.
Right.
Almost like when you're making a mechanical model and
Yes.
you've not got the starter plug on correctly or something. It just needed that final adjustment. And
what was that final breakthrough or adjustment that you made?
I think it was we were trying to be too diverse, all things to all people, and we trimmed everything back to basics.
Yeah.
And got very good at the basics. And we also matched what we were doing with the right customer profile. So a combination of those two things, I think, was the key. And getting the right people in place. We offered opportunities to probably over 3,000 people in the course of my business lifetime. I was totting up the other day.
Wow.
Not everybody used the chance wisely. But one of the guys that's running the place at the moment's been with me over 25 years.
Wow.
And he's reaped the rewards.
Yeah. You know, it sounds like a life well lived.
I think so, but I'm biased, of course.
I mean, really. You know, we need to remember that business people that initiate things, are really at the heart of things. Workers are equally important. You have to have good workers, but it's people with ideas, people with persistence.
But they need good leaders as well, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think for me, part of the strength came from my study of Oriental exercise and philosophy. So you get a feeling for the way they look at things as well, which sort of marries up with the Western style. So it changes your outlook sometimes on the way you deal with things. And martial arts has a sort of bad rep sometimes because people associate it with bullying activities and all that sort of nonsense. Sure. But if you concentrate on the art as well as the martial and apply the techniques to your ordinary lifestyle, the old yin-yang thing comes to the fore, and it can be quite instructional in a number of ways that a lot of people don't, unfortunately, get round to practicing.
Well, martial arts is big in the United States. I mean, we have the tiniest town in the world you can imagine, which is 2 blocks long, and we have a martial arts school right on the corner in the downtown, mostly for kids.
Yeah.
Now it's Taekwondo, I think. So, what was the martial art that you practiced?
The health one was Qigong, Dian Qigong, it's called.
Yeah.
And the
is that Tai Chi Gong?
Tai Chi Chuan is another form. That's
okay.
A fighting form.
Yeah.
And then Wing Chun is another defensive mechanism that based on angles and movements and so on. That was invented by a woman 400 or 500 years ago.
Yeah, these are really ancient arts that have been refined over centuries.
Literally, yeah. I think the form of the Qigong that we learn is 2,500 years old. And our teacher learned from his teacher.
Is that a martial art with sort of the movements, or is it actually sparring with people, or?
Qigong isn't sparring with anyone, and it's not a martial art. It's about cultivating your own internal life force, or qi they call it, hence the name Qigong.
Right.
Qi means energy in Chinese, and gong means work.
What is the activity involved in that in that discipline?
Well, it's a sequence of movements based on acupuncture points and relaxation and letting the Chinese medicine's based on excess or deficiency. So when you get an imbalance, you get disease. So the idea of these movements is to sort of smooth the energy out through these channels by doing certain particular movements or frequency of movements or collection of movements in various forms.
Do you still practice it?
Absolutely. Only for the last 34 years.
34 years. Wow. Yeah, I was talking to someone else, another interview recently, and this came up as well, and I thought I really missed out on that myself. But maybe it's not too late.
No, it's never too late.
You know, I do exercises at home to strengthen my body, nothing crazy, but you know, when you're really tuned into movement like that in your body, I mean, it not only helps your body, it helps your mind, right?
Well, the two things together, and also it's sort of breath work sneaks up on you. It's sort of woven into the fabric of it.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the benefits as well, because that's where you take the energy from the air and the oxygen and so on. But it's a lifelong study, really. My teacher is Michael Shea, TSE, Qigong Centre, London. And he does classes online and stuff if people are interested.
You send me the link for that, okay, and we'll put it at the bottom of this.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think some people will be interested in that. Can I ask how old you are, Martin?
71.
71. Okay, we're about the same age. So, yeah, very interesting. So what's next for you? What are your goals? What's your felt sense of what's next for you in your life?
Well, I think for me now, now I'm sort of semi-detached from business life. I was going to slide slowly into coaching and perhaps helping other people that are struggling with business and haven't had the experience I have.
Yeah.
To help them through various blockages or items that they're having trouble with.
Yes.
If I can help in that manner, it makes me feel useful and keeps the grey matter going round.
I mean, you have a lifetime of experience to share.
40-odd years, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lifetime for some people, or more for others.
Yeah.
And you've had a few years under your belt as well, haven't you, Robert?
Yeah, well, I started coaching when I didn't know so much, you know. I used to say I would buy wholesale. I'd read something and I'd be teaching it to the person the next day and learning myself as I was teaching others.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, well, it was what was wanted and needed at the time.
Yeah.
And I would discover certain things and try them out and see if they worked and show people. And, you know, I was always very organized and good at absorbing information. Anyway, so it's been a good life. But, you know, I'm really impressed by, you know, you didn't have a degree in cooking or retail or any of that stuff. You just jumped in and started.
I've not got the professional qualifications, but I've got the groundwork, boots on the ground, if you like, talking to the people and seeing what worked and what didn't work, and
right.
How we could help some people but not others, and the way sometimes people's minds were set.
Yeah. You know, it also strikes me that you weren't chasing after money. You were just really interested in the work. You were interested in helping people. You wanted to make money, of course, but that wasn't the main thing. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said it's. That's where the visionary comes in. Really, it's. I think we all need to understand how things work better, how life works, how the bodies work, how the planet works, how everything should sort of fit in together instead of all this sort of clashing and grating and making everything hard work. It's been around, the planet's been around for quite a few years before we turned up. So let's try and keep it going for a few years longer.
Yeah.
And if we all help each other, it'll be a lot easier.
Yes. Well, Martin, it's really been great speaking to you.
Thanks. If
Thanks
anybody wants any help with anything, I've got an email address I can give you, or Robert can sort something out for you.
Yeah, I'll provide a contact information. So
thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Martin.